The cold Siberian wind howled through the mountains as Dr. Sarah Chen wiped dirt from her gloves. She had been digging in these caves for 3 months now, and her team was exhausted. The Denisova cave was famous among archaeologists. Ancient humans had lived here thousands of years ago. Sarah and her team hoped to find tools, bones, or anything that could tell them more about early human life. "Dr. Chen, you need to see this," called out Marcus, one of the junior researchers. His voice echoed through the newly discovered chamber they had opened 2 days ago. Sarah climbed down the ladder into the deep chamber. The air smelled of earth and time. Her headlamp cut through the darkness, revealing stone walls that had not seen light in millennia. Marcus stood in the corner, his face pale with excitement and confusion. "Look at this," he whispered, pointing his light at the ground. Sarah knelt down and her breath caught in her throat. Half buried in the ancient soil was something that did not belong. It was a sphere, perfectly smooth and made of some kind of metal. The surface gleamed in their lights, showing no rust, no scratches, nothing that suggested it had been buried for thousands of years. "This cannot be here," Sarah muttered. She pulled out her tools and carefully began to expose more of the object. The other team members gathered around, their excited whispers filling the chamber. The sphere was about the size of a basketball. As they cleared away more dirt, Sarah could see that it was absolutely perfect. No seams, no marks, no signs of how it was made. Her mind raced with possibilities, but none of them made sense. "We need to document everything," Sarah said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Pictures from every angle, measurements, soil samples from around it. This is impossible." Dr. James Rodriguez, the team's dating expert, shook his head in disbelief. "Sarah, according to the soil layers, this object is buried at a depth that suggests it has been here for at least 40,000 years. That is before modern metalworking, before agriculture, before civilization." "That cannot be right," Sarah said. "Run the tests again." But she knew James was careful. He did not make mistakes. Sarah reached out slowly, her hand trembling slightly. She needed to touch it, to confirm it was real. Her fingers made contact with the smooth, cold surface. Everything changed in an instant. The sphere suddenly vibrated under her touch. A low humming sound filled the chamber, making everyone step back in alarm. Sarah tried to pull her hand away, but she felt frozen, unable to move. The metal surface beneath her fingers grew warm. Then it began to glow. Soft blue light emanated from within the sphere, growing brighter with each passing second. The humming increased in pitch, and suddenly, beams of light shot upward from the object. The beams formed shapes in the air above the sphere, symbols and characters that looked like nothing Sarah had ever seen. "What is happening?" Marcus shouted over the noise. Sarah could only stare. The floating symbols were beautiful and terrifying. They looked like a written language, but completely alien. The characters twisted and turned, rearranging themselves in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Then something even more impossible happened. The symbols began to change. They morphed and shifted, flowing like liquid light. Sarah watched in stunned silence as the alien characters transformed into letters she recognized. English letters. They arranged themselves into words, floating in the air before her eyes. 3 words. Just 3 words that made Sarah's heart stop. "Welcome back, Sarah." The chamber fell into absolute silence, except for the gentle humming of the sphere. Everyone stared at the glowing message. Sarah's name, her name in perfect English, projected by an object that had been buried for 40,000 years. "How?" whispered Dr. Lin Zhao, the team linguist. "How does it know English? How does it know your name?" Sarah could not answer. She was still frozen in place, her hand on the sphere, unable to process what she was seeing. The message hung in the air, pulsing gently, as if waiting for a response. "Sarah, move away from it," James shouted, finally breaking the spell. Sarah stumbled backward, breaking contact with the sphere. The moment her hand left the surface, the projected words vanished, but the sphere continued to glow and hum, its light casting dancing shadows on the ancient stone walls. "We need to get out of here," Marcus said, his voice shaking. "We need to call someone. The government. The military. Someone. Wait, Sarah said, her scientific curiosity fighting with her fear. We need to understand what this is. Say include with Nauer. We need to understand what this is. Understand it? James said incredulously. Sarah, that thing just displayed your name in English. It is 40,000 years old. This is beyond our understanding. This is beyond anything humanity has ever found. Sarah knew he was right. But she could not tear her eyes away from the glowing sphere. It looked peaceful now. Almost gentle. But the implications of what had just happened were terrifying. An artifact older than civilization, buried before humans had even invented writing. Somehow knew modern English, and knew her name. Everyone, up the ladder. Now, Sarah ordered, finally accepting the severity of the situation. We seal this chamber and contact the authorities immediately. The team scrambled up the ladder, leaving their equipment behind in their rush to evacuate. Sarah was the last to climb out. Pausing at the top to look back down, the sphere's blue glow illuminated the chamber below, steady and patient, like it had all the time in the world. Within hours, the site was swarming with people. Government officials, military personnel, and scientists from around the world descended on the small dig site. Sarah and her team were separated, questioned, and tested. They drew her blood, scanned her brain, and asked her thousands of questions. Have you ever been here before? They asked. No. Do you have any family history connected to this region? No. Can you explain how the object knew your name? No. They put her in a clean room, quarantined from the rest of the world. Through a window, she could see other scientists in protective suits examining footage of the sphere's activation. She watched them argue and point at screens, their faces showing the same confusion and fear she felt. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, a quantum physicist from Tokyo, came to speak with her through an intercom. Dr. Chen, we have run every test we can think of. The sphere is made of materials we cannot identify. It operates on principles we do not understand. And it only responds to you. What do you mean it only responds to me? Sarah asked. We have tried to activate it again. We have touched it, scanned it, even attempted to move it. Nothing works. It just sits there, glowing softly. Waiting. Waiting for what? Dr. Tanaka was quiet for a moment. We believe it is waiting for you to come back. Sarah looked through the window at the screens showing the sphere. It sat in its ancient chamber, surrounded by equipment and nervous scientists, pulsing with a gentle blue light. Somehow, impossibly, it knew her. It had been waiting in the darkness for 40,000 years, waiting for her to find it. But why? 3 days had passed since the sphere had displayed Sarah's name. She had barely slept, her mind racing with questions that had no answers. The government had turned the cave site into a fortress. Armed guards stood at every entrance, and scientists worked around the clock, trying to understand the impossible object. Sarah sat in her temporary quarters, staring at test results that made no sense. Her blood work was normal. Her brain scans showed nothing unusual. She was just an ordinary human being, so why had the sphere chosen her? A knock on her door interrupted her thoughts. Colonel Peterson entered, his face grave and tired. Behind him stood Dr. Tanaka and 2 other scientists Sarah had not met before. Dr. Chen, we need you to go back down to the sphere, Colonel Peterson said without preamble. Sarah stood up quickly. You said it was too dangerous. You said we needed more time to study it from a distance. We have run out of time, Dr. Tanaka said quietly. He pulled out a tablet and showed her an image. 6 hours ago, the sphere changed. It started projecting new symbols. We cannot read them, but they are displaying in a pattern that suggests a countdown. Sarah felt her stomach drop. A countdown to what? We do not know. That is why we need you. An hour later, Sarah stood at the entrance to the chamber, wearing a protective suit covered in sensors. A small team of specialists surrounded her: linguists, physicists, and military personnel. Everyone looked tense. Remember, Dr. Chen, Colonel Peterson said through her earpiece. If anything feels dangerous, you pull back immediately. We will get you out. Sarah nodded and began climbing down the ladder. The sphere's glow had intensified since she last saw it. It pulsed now, like a heartbeat, filling the chamber with rhythmic blue light. As soon as her feet touched the ground, the humming sound increased. The sphere knew she was there. Sarah approached slowly, her heart pounding. She could see the symbols Dr. Tanaka had mentioned, floating in a circle around the sphere. They looked even more complex than before, constantly shifting and changing. "I am here," Sarah said softly, feeling foolish for talking to an ancient object. As if responding to her voice, the sphere's light flared brightly. Sarah shielded her eyes, and when she looked again, the symbols had changed. They were transforming. Just like before, shifting from alien characters into English letters. But this time, it was not just 3 words. A massive holographic display erupted from the sphere, filling half the chamber. Sarah gasped as she saw what appeared to be a star map. She recognized Earth's solar system immediately. The sun, the planets, all in their correct positions. A glowing line extended from Earth, reaching out into deep space, traveling an impossible distance to another solar system she did not recognize. "Are you seeing this?" Sarah whispered into her microphone. "We see it," Dr. Tanaka's excited voice came through. "That is a map showing a location approximately 40,000 light-years from Earth. The same distance as the age of the object." More information began appearing around the star map. Mathematical equations, scientific formulas, and strings of data that Sarah could barely comprehend. Then, she saw something that made her freeze. DNA sequences. The hologram displayed complex genetic codes, rotating slowly in the air. Sarah had studied enough biology to recognize human DNA patterns. But these sequences had markers she had never seen before. They were highlighted, emphasized, as if the sphere wanted her to pay special attention to them. "Dr. Chen, our geneticist wants to know if you can capture clear images of those DNA sequences." Colonel Peterson's voice crackled through her earpiece. Sarah moved closer, her suit's cameras recording everything. As she approached, new text appeared beneath the genetic codes. The words made her blood run cold. "Genetic match confirmed. Keyholder identified. Time remaining, 96 hours. 96 hours until what?" Sarah said aloud. The hologram shifted again, this time showing Earth from space. Beautiful and blue, suspended in the darkness. Then, other objects appeared around it. Massive, angular shapes that Sarah realized were supposed to be ships. Alien vessels. The image showed them approaching Earth from the direction of the distant solar system marked on the star map. "They are coming," Sarah whispered. The text changed. "They are coming. You must remember." "Remember what?" Sarah asked desperately. "I do not understand. What am I supposed to remember?" The sphere pulsed brighter, and suddenly Sarah felt a strange sensation in her head. It was not painful, but it was deeply unsettling, like something was trying to push into her mind, trying to show her something just beyond her reach. Images flashed before her eyes, not from the hologram, but inside her own mind. She saw Earth, but different. The land masses were wrong, covered in ice. She saw people, but they looked strange, dressed in furs and carrying primitive tools. And she saw something else. Others. Beings that looked almost human but were taller, with eyes that glowed faintly in the darkness. Sarah stumbled backward, breaking the mental connection. She was breathing hard, confused, and frightened. "Sarah, what happened?" "Your vital signs spiked," Colonel Peterson demanded. "I saw something. Memories, but they are not mine. They cannot be mine." Dr. Tanaka's voice came through, excited and urgent. "Sarah, we have been analyzing those DNA sequences the sphere displayed. You need to hear this." "What is it?" "We cross-referenced them with the genetic database. Those specific markers, those unusual codes, they exist in less than 0.01% of the human population. Sarah, they exist in your DNA." Sarah felt dizzy. "That is impossible. My family is Chinese. We have records going back centuries. There is nothing unusual about my genetics." "These markers are not recent," Dr. Tanaka explained. They are ancient, very ancient. They have been passed down through countless generations, hidden in the human genome. Sarah, you are not the only one. We have found 6 other people alive today who carry these exact markers. But you are the closest match to what the sphere is looking for. I do not understand what this means, Sarah said, her voice shaking. The hologram changed once more. This time, it showed a human figure, or something close to human. The figure rotated slowly, and Sarah could see that it was marked with glowing points throughout its body, highlighting specific genetic locations, the same locations where her unusual DNA markers existed. Text appeared. You are the key. Your bloodline was chosen. Awakening protocol initiated. Chosen for what? Sarah demanded, her fear turning to anger. Who chose my ancestors? Why? The countdown appeared again, larger this time. 95 hours, 23 minutes remaining. Then, the hologram displayed one more image that made everyone in the command center go silent. It showed a woman. She looked remarkably like Sarah, the same facial structure, the same eyes, but she was wearing clothing that looked both ancient and impossibly advanced. She appeared to be standing in some kind of chamber, surrounded by technology. The woman in the image raised her hand, as if reaching out across time itself. Words appeared beneath her image. Forgive us. We had no choice. They found us. They will find you. Prepare. The hologram flickered and vanished. The sphere's humming decreased, returning to its gentle, steady pulse. Sarah stood in the silent chamber, surrounded by ancient stone and impossible technology. Trying to process what she had just seen, Colonel Peterson's voice was tight with barely controlled panic. Dr. Chen, we need you back up here immediately. We have protocols to activate. If something is coming to Earth in 4 days, we need to prepare. But Sarah could not move. She stared at the sphere, at this relic from 40,000 years ago that knew her name, that recognized her DNA, that carried a message from someone who looked just like her. Who were you? Sarah whispered to the vanished image. What did you do to my ancestors? The sphere pulsed once, as if acknowledging her question. But it offered no more answers. Not yet. Sarah finally turned and climbed back up the ladder, leaving the glowing sphere behind. But she knew she would return. The sphere was not done with her. Whatever awakening protocol it had mentioned, whatever was supposed to happen in the next 4 days, she was at the center of it. She was the key. And something was coming. Sarah had not left the research facility in 2 days. The countdown continued relentlessly. 72 hours remained, and the world was beginning to panic. News of the sphere had leaked despite the government's best efforts to keep it secret. Social media exploded with theories, fears, and wild speculation about alien invasion, but Sarah barely noticed the chaos outside. She was too focused on the strange things happening inside her own mind. The dreams had started the night after her second visit to the sphere. At first, they seemed random flashes of faces she did not recognize, places she had never been, voices speaking languages that should have been incomprehensible, but somehow, she understood them. Now, sitting in the lab while scientists analyzed her latest brain scans, Sarah closed her eyes and the visions came again. This time, they were clearer, more focused. She saw Earth as it was 40,000 years ago. Ice covered much of the northern continents. Small groups of humans huddled around fires, struggling to survive. But there were others among them, the tall beings with glowing eyes that she had glimpsed before. They moved carefully through human settlements, watching, observing, hiding. Dr. Chen, are you all right? Sarah's eyes snapped open. Dr. Tanaka was standing in front of her, concern written across his face. I am seeing things, Sarah said quietly. Memories. But they are not my memories. The sphere did something to you, Doctor, Tanaka said. Your brain activity has changed. There are new neural pathways forming, connections that were not there before. It is as if information is being unlocked in your mind. What kind of information? Before Dr. Tanaka could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Colonel Peterson's voice came over the intercom system. All personnel to the command center immediately. The other key holders have been located. Sarah and Dr. Tanaka rushed to the command center, where multiple screens showed locations across the globe. In each location, authorities had found people with the same genetic markers as Sarah, 6 people, scattered across different continents. "We are bringing them here," Colonel Peterson explained. "They need to be together." "Something tells me that is important." "How are they?" Sarah asked. The colonel's face was grim. "They are all experiencing the same symptoms as you. Dreams, visions, unexplained knowledge. One of them, a man in Brazil, started speaking in a language that linguists cannot identify. But when we played the recording for our team, they realized something extraordinary. The mathematical constants he was reciting were correct. He was explaining advanced physics in an unknown language." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Whatever was happening to her was happening to all of them. They were being changed, prepared for something. 24 hours later, all 7 key holders sat together in a secure conference room. Sarah studied each of them carefully. There was Miguel, from Brazil, a fisherman who had never finished school but was now drawing complex engineering diagrams. Amara from Kenya, a teacher who had begun seeing star maps in her dreams. Dmitri from Russia, an old farmer who suddenly remembered detailed information about quantum mechanics. Li Wei from China, a student who could now read the alien symbols the sphere displayed. Priya from India, a doctor who understood biological systems she had never studied. And James from Australia, a mechanic who could describe technologies that did not yet exist. They were ordinary people from ordinary lives. But something ancient slept in their blood, and now it was waking up. "Does anyone understand what is happening to us?" Amara asked, her voice trembling. Sarah stood up, and as she did, the fragmented memories in her mind suddenly came together like pieces of a puzzle. She gasped as understanding flooded through her. "I know," Sarah whispered. "I remember now. We all remember. We just need to access it." She turned to the others. "Close your eyes. Stop fighting the memories. Let them come." One by one, the key holders closed their eyes. The room fell silent, except for the hum of electronics. Then, as if a dam had broken, the memories came rushing in. They all saw the same story. 40,000 years ago, a civilization fled across the stars. They were refugees, running from an enemy that consumed worlds. They called these enemies the Devourers machines, built by a long-dead race, programmed to harvest biological life for raw materials. The Devourers had destroyed 1,000 civilizations, leaving dead worlds in their wake. The refugees searched for a safe place to hide. They found Earth, a primitive world, inhabited by early humans. The planet was too undeveloped to attract the Devourers' attention. It was perfect, but the refugees knew they could not stay as themselves. The Devourers tracked biological signatures across vast distances. If the refugees remained in their original form, they would eventually be found. So they made a desperate choice. They would hide within humanity itself, using advanced genetic engineering. They modified their own DNA to be compatible with humans. They had children with the native population, carefully hiding their genetic legacy within human bloodlines. Most of their knowledge and technology was buried, waiting. Only a few remained in their true form, creating the spheres as guardians and guides. The woman Sarah had seen in the hologram, she was one of the last. Her name was something Sarah's human mouth could not properly pronounce, but she could feel the meaning. She who remembers. This woman had overseen the final preparations before allowing herself to fully become human, to disappear into the genetic sea of humanity. But they left safeguards, genetic triggers that would activate if the Devourers ever found Earth. The 7 keyholders were descendants of the most important refugees, scientists, strategists, warriors. Their genetics carried compressed information, waiting to be unlocked. Sarah opened her eyes, tears streaming down her face. The others did the same, all of them shaking with the weight of inherited memory. "We are not fully human," Miguel said in wonder. "We never were. We are human," Sarah corrected him. "But we are also something more. Our ancestors from 40,000 years ago made sure we would be ready if this day ever came. Ready for what? James asked, though Sarah suspected he already knew the answer. The Devourers, she said. They finally tracked the refugees' trail to Earth. They are coming. And the countdown is how long we have before they arrive. Colonel Peterson, who had been listening through the observation window, entered the room. His face was pale. We have been monitoring unusual readings in the outer solar system. Something large is approaching. Multiple objects, moving at impossible speeds. They will reach Earth in approximately 60 hours. Then we need to activate the defenses, Dmitri said, his elderly voice carrying authority that had not been there before. The refugees did not just hide here. They prepared for this possibility. What defenses? The colonel asked. Sarah stood and walked to a wall display. Without conscious thought, her hands began pulling up maps, geological surveys, and seismic data. She marked 7 locations across the globe, each one corresponding to ancient human migration routes. Beneath these sites, there are structures, Sarah explained, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Defense networks built by our ancestors. They have been dormant for 40,000 years, waiting for the awakening signal. The spheres, Li Wei said, understanding dawning. There are 7 spheres. 1 for each of us. 1 for each defense site. Sarah nodded. The spheres are not just message containers. They are keys. Each of us is linked to one of the defense networks. We can activate them. Control them. How? Priya asked. I do not know, Sarah admitted. The memories are still incomplete. But we are running out of time. We need to go to these sites, connect with the spheres, and hope that our ancestors left us enough knowledge to defend our world. Colonel Peterson looked at the 7 ordinary people who suddenly held humanity's survival in their hands. Then we move immediately. We have 60 hours to save the world. Sarah looked at the other key holders. They were scared, confused, and overwhelmed. But she also saw determination in their eyes. They might not have asked for this responsibility, but they would not run from it. Our ancestors hid among humans for 40,000 years, Sarah said softly. They gave up everything they were to protect this world and give humanity a chance. Now, it is our turn. The countdown continued. Somewhere in the darkness between stars, the Devourers approached. Unaware that the prey they hunted had left guardians behind, the awakening had begun. 7 military transport planes flew across the globe, each carrying one of the key holders to their designated defense site. Sarah sat in her aircraft, watching the clouds pass below. She was heading back to Siberia, to the sphere that had started everything. The other key holders were being transported to their locations, ancient caves, buried structures, places where humanity's earliest ancestors had walked. Each site contained a sphere identical to the one Sarah had found. All of them had activated simultaneously when Sarah first touched hers. Dr. Chen, we are approaching the site, the pilot announced. Sarah took a deep breath and checked her communication device. She could see status updates from the other teams. All 6 key holders had reached their destinations. They were ready, but ready for what? The memories in Sarah's mind were becoming clearer, but they were also terrifying. She now understood what the defense networks were capable of. The refugee civilization had been incredibly advanced, far beyond current human technology. They had built weapons that could tear apart planets, shields that could withstand star-level energy, systems that operated on principles humanity had not even theorized yet. But there was a problem. A terrible problem that Sarah had only realized a few hours ago. The defense networks were designed to be operated by their creators, not by humans. The refugee species had different neural structures, different ways of processing information, different cognitive abilities. Humans simply did not have the mental capacity to control such complex systems. Sarah's plane landed near the cave site. She was escorted quickly underground, past dozens of armed soldiers and scientists, back to the chamber where the sphere waited. It glowed brighter now, pulsing with urgency as the countdown ticked away. Sarah, Can you hear me? Dr. Tanaka's voice came through her earpiece. He was at the main command center, coordinating all 7 sites. I hear you, Sarah replied. We have a problem. The spheres are showing new information. We need all 7 of you to look at it together. Sarah approached her sphere and placed her hand on its smooth surface. Immediately, her vision shifted. She found herself in a shared virtual space with the other 6 key holders. They appeared as ghostly figures around her, all connected through the ancient network. What is this? Miguel asked, looking around in wonder. The spheres created a mental link between us, Sarah explained. We can communicate directly, mind to mind. A holographic display appeared in the center of their group. It showed detailed schematics of the defense networks, along with operational requirements. Sarah felt her heart sink as she read the information. The others saw it too, and she felt their fear through the connection. This cannot be right, Amara said, her voice shaking. It says human neural capacity is insufficient for network operation. We do not have the brain power to control these systems, Dmitri said grimly. They are too complex, too fast. We would need to process millions of calculations per second, perceive quantum states, coordinate across 7 locations simultaneously. No human can do that. But the refugees planned for this, Li Wei said, pointing to another section of the display. Look, there is a solution. The hologram showed a procedure. The spheres could modify their neural structures, enhance their brains, upgrade their cognitive abilities to match what was needed. They would become something more than human hybrid beings capable of interfacing with the ancient technology. This is insane, James said. They want to change us permanently. We would not be fully human anymore. The success rate is only 60%, Priya added, her medical training making her focus on the statistics. There is a 40% chance this procedure would kill us. Or worse, leave us brain damaged. Sarah studied the information carefully. The procedure would rewrite portions of their neural architecture at the quantum level. It would expand their consciousness, allow them to perceive and process information in ways that were currently impossible for humans, but it would also fundamentally change who they were. We have a choice to make, Sarah said quietly. We can attempt this procedure, risk our lives, and possibly become something other than human. Or we can refuse and leave Earth defenseless against the devourers. That is no choice at all, Miguel said bitterly. It is, Sarah insisted. No one should be forced to give up their humanity to save the world. If any of you want to refuse, I will understand. We all will. The 7 keyholders stood in silence, each wrestling with the impossible decision. Through their mental link, Sarah could feel their emotions: fear, doubt, anger, determination. I have children, Amara said softly. 3 beautiful children. If I do this and die, they lose their mother. But if I do not do this, and the devourers come, they die anyway. Everyone dies. I am 73 years old, Dmitri said. I have lived a full life. If I must change to save others, that is acceptable to me. One by one, the keyholders spoke. Each had their reasons, their fears, their hopes. But in the end, they all reached the same conclusion. They would try, not because they wanted to, but because no one else could. Then we do this together, Sarah said. All 7 of us, at the same time. If we fail together. They disconnected from the shared space and returned to their individual sites. Sarah looked at the sphere in front of her, glowing with patient, ancient power. Colonel Peterson stood nearby, his face lined with worry. Are you certain about this, Dr. Chen? He asked. No, Sarah admitted. But I am doing it anyway. She touched the sphere again, this time with both hands. Immediately, she felt it responding, preparing for the procedure. Through her connection to the network, she sensed the other 6 keyholders doing the same at their locations. Begin on my mark, Sarah said into her communicator. 3, 2, 1. Mark. The sphere's light intensified, becoming almost blinding. Sarah felt something enter her mind, not violently, but firmly, like a surgeon's careful hand. The sphere began to work, rebuilding neural pathways, creating new connections, expanding her consciousness beyond its normal limits. The pain was indescribable. Sarah wanted to scream, to pull away, but she forced herself to remain still. Through the network, she felt the others experiencing the same agony. Miguel was crying. Amara was praying. Dimitri's heart was struggling. But none of them let go. Information flooded into Sarah's mind. Mathematical concepts she had never learned but suddenly understood perfectly. Physics principles that seemed impossible but made complete sense. Languages, technologies, strategies, 40,000 years of compressed knowledge, unpacking itself in her expanded consciousness. She could feel her perception changing. Time seemed to slow down. She became aware of quantum fluctuations in the air around her, of electromagnetic fields, of gravitational waves passing through the earth. Her mind processed thousands of sensory inputs simultaneously without effort, but she also felt herself changing in other ways. Emotions became different, not gone, but processed differently. Her sense of self expanded, becoming less individual and more connected to something larger. She could feel the other 6 key holders more clearly now, their minds touching hers across vast distances. Neural enhancement complete, a voice said, not through her ears, but directly into her upgraded mind. It was the sphere, or rather, the intelligence programmed into it by she who remembers 40,000 years ago. Sarah opened her eyes. The world looked different now. She could see more colors than before, perceive dimensions of reality that human eyes normally could not detect. The cave chamber was alive with energy patterns, quantum probability fields, and information streams flowing through the ancient technology. Status report, she said, and was startled by how calm her voice sounded, despite what she had just endured. All 7 key holders successfully enhanced, Dr. Tanaka reported, his voice filled with relief and wonder. You all survived. The procedure worked. Through the network, Sarah connected with the others. They were changed, just as she was. Different. More. But still themselves, still human at their core. Just expanded. The defense networks are responding, Li Wei reported. His voice had changed too, carrying harmonics that were not quite natural. I can feel them powering up. Deep beneath the earth. They have been waiting so long. Time remaining? Sarah asked. 12 hours, Dimitri answered. The Devourers will reach Earth's orbit in 12 hours. Sarah reached out with her enhanced mind and touched the defense network. It responded immediately, recognizing her as the operator it had been built for. She felt 7 massive structures awakening beneath different parts of the Earth systems, so powerful and complex that her old human mind could never have comprehended them. But now she could. Now she understood. Connect all networks, Sarah commanded. Link all 7 sites into a unified defense grid. We stand together, or we fall together. The other key holders acknowledged, and Sarah felt their minds joining with hers. 7 becoming 1. 1 becoming 7. Together, they were something unprecedented, humans enhanced with ancient alien technology. Bridges between 2 civilizations separated by 40,000 years. They are coming, Amara said, her enhanced senses detecting the approaching threat. Sarah looked up through layers of rock and atmosphere, her new perception allowing her to sense the Devourers at the edge of the solar system. They were massive, terrible, and utterly without mercy. But Earth was no longer defenseless, and the descendants of those who had hidden here so long ago were finally ready to fight back. The final battle was about to begin. They awoke a 40,000-year-old relic, and it showed her name in perfect English. Part 5. The Stand. The countdown reached 0. Around the world, people stopped what they were doing and looked up at the sky. News broadcasts had been showing the same images for hours. Massive objects detected beyond the moon, moving toward Earth at impossible speeds. Governments had tried to keep people calm, but panic spread through cities and towns like wildfire. In the secure command center, military leaders and scientists watched their screens with growing dread. The objects were now visible through telescopes, angular, dark vessels that dwarfed Earth's largest ships. There were 12 of them, arranged in a pattern that suggested coordinated intelligence. The Devourers had arrived. Deep underground at 7 locations across the planet, the keyholders stood connected to their spheres, their enhanced minds linked together in a network of consciousness that spanned continents. Sarah felt the presence of the other 6 as clearly as she felt her own heartbeat. They were ready. Defense network status? Sarah asked, her voice calm despite the magnitude of what was about to happen. All 7 sites at full power, Dmitri responded. His consciousness touched hers, sharing detailed information faster than words could convey. Energy reserves stable. Weapon systems online. Shield generators prepared. Through her enhanced perception, Sarah could see the defense network as a living thing. 7 massive structures buried deep in the Earth's crust, connected by energy conduits that followed ancient ley lines. Technology that had slept for 40,000 years now hummed with power, ready to protect the world above. The Devourers are entering high orbit, Li Wei reported. His mind showed Sarah what he was sensing: the enemy vessels taking positions around Earth. Their dark hulls bristling with harvesting equipment designed to strip a planet bare of biological life. They are scanning the surface, Priya added, looking for the refugees they tracked here. They do not realize those refugees have been dead for thousands of generations. They do not care, Miguel said grimly. The Devourers do not distinguish between original targets and native life. They will harvest everything. Sarah felt a probe touch the planet's surface, the Devourers' first test. It was a beam of energy designed to sample biological density, to determine how much raw material Earth could provide. The beam struck somewhere in the Pacific Ocean. Activate shields, Sarah commanded. Instantly, invisible barriers erupted around Earth. They were not solid walls but quantum fields that could deflect or absorb massive amounts of energy. The technology was so advanced that human science would need centuries to understand even the basic principles. The Devourer's probe beam hit the shield and scattered harmlessly into space. Through the network, Sarah felt the enemy vessels react with what might have been surprise. They had not expected resistance. They are changing formation, James warned, preparing for a full assault. Sarah's enhanced mind processed the tactical situation in milliseconds. The Devourers had overwhelming numbers and firepower. The defense network was powerful but had been designed for a different era, different enemies. The keyholders would need to be clever, not just strong. Amara, strengthen the shield over population centers, Sarah directed. Dmitri, prepare the northern weapon batteries. Li Wei, I need you to jam their communication frequencies. Everyone else, stand ready. The Devourers attacked. Beams of destructive energy lanced down from orbit, striking the shields at multiple points. The barriers held, but Sarah felt the strain through her connection to the network. The enemy was testing their defenses, looking for weak points. They are powerful, Amara said, her voice tight with concentration, as she maintained the shields over cities where billions of people huddled in fear. But they are machines, Sarah replied. They follow patterns. They can be predicted. She was right. The Devourers had destroyed 1,000 civilizations using the same tactics, the same strategies. They were efficient and deadly, but they lacked creativity. They could not adapt the way living beings could. Now, Sarah commanded, from 7 points around the globe, energy beams erupted from the Earth's surface. They were not crude projectile weapons but directed quantum disruption fields, technology that could tear apart matter at the subatomic level. 3 of the Devourer vessels were caught by surprise, their hulls disintegrating as the ancient weapons found their marks. 9 remained. They are adapting their shields, Li Wei reported. My next attack will be less effective. Then we change tactics, Sarah said. She reached deeper into the defense network, accessing systems that even she who remembers had been reluctant to use. These were weapons designed not just to destroy ships but to collapse local space-time, to create gravitational anomalies that could crush anything nearby. Sarah, Those weapons are dangerous, Priya cautioned. If we miscalculate, we could damage Earth's orbit. I know, Sarah said. But we do not have a choice. Target the 3 closest vessels. Fire on my mark. The keyholders synchronized their actions. Their 7 minds working as one. They calculated trajectories, energy outputs, and gravitational effects with precision that no computer could match. Their enhanced brains processed variables faster than any machine. Mark. 3 points in space near Earth suddenly collapsed in on themselves, creating miniature black holes that existed for only fractions of a second. But those fractions were enough. 3 more Devourer vessels were caught in the gravitational distortions and crushed into nothing. 6 remained, but the effort had cost them. Sarah felt exhaustion rippling through the network. The keyholders were pushing their newly enhanced minds to the limit. They could not maintain this level of coordination much longer. The Devourers changed their strategy. Instead of attacking directly, they began deploying smaller craft, thousands of them, swarming down toward Earth's surface like locusts. Each one carried harvesting equipment that could strip biological matter from soil, water, even air. They are going to bypass our shields and attack everywhere at once, Miguel said, horror in his voice. We cannot stop them all. Sarah felt despair threatening to overwhelm her. He was right. The defense network was powerful, but it had never been designed to stop such a distributed attack. The Devourers were adapting, using their machine efficiency to exploit a weakness in the ancient defenses. Through their mental link, Sarah felt the other keyholders' emotions. Fear, exhaustion, doubt. They had sacrificed their humanity, transformed themselves into something new, and it still might not be enough. Then Dimitri's consciousness touched hers, and she felt something unexpected. Determination. Hope. Sarah, the old farmer said quietly, we have been thinking like the refugees who built these defenses. But we are not them. We are human, and humans do not give up. Sarah understood immediately. The refugee civilization had been dying, defeated. They had built these defenses out of desperation, never expecting them to actually succeed. But humans were different. Humanity had survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and disasters through stubborn refusal to surrender. You are right, Sarah said. We need to fight like humans. She reached out to the other keyholders with a new idea. It was risky, probably insane, but it was creative in a way the ancient machines could never have predicted. What if we do not try to stop all the harvesters? Sarah proposed. What if we let them come close, make them think they are winning, and then turn their own energy against them? You want to use them as bombs, James said, understanding dawning. Let them get close to the Devourer ships, then overload their power cores. Exactly. The keyholders acted quickly. They lowered sections of the shield, creating apparent gaps in Earth's defenses. The harvesters swarmed toward these openings like moths to flame. But as they descended, the keyholders marked each one, connecting to the harvesters' power systems through quantum manipulation. Wait, Sarah cautioned. Let them get closer. Closer. The harvesters descended toward cities where millions of people watched in terror from their homes. On the news, reporters shouted that the defenses had failed, that the end was coming. Now, Sarah commanded, thousands of harvesters suddenly exploded simultaneously. But these were not random explosions. The keyholders had synchronized the detonations to create a chain reaction, sending massive waves of energy back toward the 6 Devourer motherships in orbit. The ancient machines had no defense against their own weapons. 4 of the remaining vessels were destroyed instantly. The last 2, damaged and confused, began to retreat. Do not let them escape, Dimitri urged. If even one survives, it will report Earth's location and defenses to others. More will come. Sarah knew he was right. With the last of their strength, the 7 keyholders fired the defense network's most powerful weapons. Beams of pure energy reached up through the atmosphere and caught the fleeing vessels. There was no escape. The last 2 Devourers were torn apart, their fragments scattering into space. Silence fell across the network. The battle was over. Earth was safe. Around the world, people emerged from their homes and shelters, looking up at a sky that was clear once more. News broadcasts struggled to explain what had happened. How Earth had survived when destruction had seemed certain, but Sarah barely noticed the celebrations. She and the other keyholders were exhausted. Their enhanced minds pushed far beyond what they had thought possible. Through their link, they supported each other. 7 beings who were no longer quite human, but who had saved humanity nonetheless. "What happens to us now?" Amara asked softly. Sarah looked at her hands. They appeared normal, but she could see the quantum fields surrounding them, could perceive dimensions of reality that ordinary humans could not. She could never go back to who she had been. None of them could. "We cannot return to our old lives," Sarah said. "We are changed. Forever. Then we move forward," Li Wei said. "We created the Guardian Foundation. We monitor space, watch for other threats, and protect Earth from dangers people do not even know exist. And we stay connected to humanity," Priya added. "We are different now. But we are still human where it matters. In our hearts." Sarah thought about her family, her friends, the people she had known before the sphere had changed everything. She would see them again, but it would never be the same. She existed on a different level now, aware of things they could never perceive, but as she looked at the world through her enhanced senses, feeling the presence of the other 6 keyholders supporting her across the distances, Sarah realized something important. She had not lost her humanity, she had expanded it. She represented what humans could become when pushed beyond their limits, when forced to be more. High above, satellites captured images of the debris from the destroyed Devourer fleet. Scientists would study those fragments for decades, learning new technologies, new principles. Humanity's first contact with alien life had been violent, but they had survived. And somewhere in the depths of space, other civilizations would eventually learn what had happened here. They would hear the story of 7 ordinary humans who transformed themselves to save their world. The story of Earth, the planet that refused to be harvested. Sarah closed her eyes and sent one final thought through the network to her fellow guardians. "We did it. We saved them all." 6 voices answered as one. "We did." The spheres dimmed, their purpose fulfilled. But they would remain, waiting and watching, ready if Earth ever needed them again. And the 7 keyholders would stand ready too, forever changed, forever vigilant, forever human at heart. The age of ignorance was over. The age of guardianship had begun. The end.